Welcome back to Communicology. Today I'd like to talk about something that comes to play every time we get towards the summer months, especially, and people decide they want to go out and protest something. Doesn't matter to me what you're protesting, but there's some things you should be thinking about when it comes to your First Amendment rights. Now, don't get me wrong, I am very much a fan of supporting the police, but I'm a much bigger fan of our Constitution. And there's certain things that matter when you're going to go out and do any kind of protest, and that's an understanding of how are you able to record police and what's legal and what's not legal and all that kind of thing. So again, this is one of those things that, again, I'm very focused on the First Amendment and the idea of your freedom of speech and expression and your right to be, serve as press agents. But I'm also very aware of your need to peaceably assemble. So this does not cover people who are breaking the law. This does not cover interfering with police investigations and work. This is purely for people who are out to peaceably assemble and to demonstrate against government or whatever else they wish to protest and speak out. So again, legal. I'm focusing on the legal aspect. Now, when it comes to filming in public, you're pretty well covered by a case from 2011 called Gilk v. Cuniff. And Gilk v. Cuniff focused on a case out of Boston, and it covered the idea of, do you have a right to film police work? Now, it's been understood that you could do this, but every once in a while you'll see situations where police will, stop people from filming them, and it eventually went up the court ladder to this case of Gilk versus Cuniff in 2011 that says, yes, you can arrest people because or you can't film people, police doing arrests. And this was in a Boston park, and a public park, so obviously we're talking not private property. So you do have the right to record police officers exercising their official duties in public. So again, you have the right to record them doing their official duties. This does not include interfering. Again, peaceably protest. You have the right to peaceably protest. So if there's something you want to make sure that you're covered well and protected, this is a good thing to understand. Now, this isn't to go and try to nail police officers or things like that. Obviously, just like any other profession, there's some bad apples in policing, and obviously you want to protect yourself against those. But it's also to protect you against counter-protestors. Because nowadays protesting is not enough. There's going to be another group that shows up that's against the protesters. And you want to be able to film yourself and film others who may be out to harm you. So it's important to be thinking of, how can I do this kind of work? And of course, understanding that police will likely show up. So now you have three groups: your protest, the counter-protest, and police officers. So you want to be able to understand that those three groups all exist in the same space. They all have a constitutional right to be there. They all have constitutional protections to do the things that they're doing. And it's all things that we should understand that they're good. It's perfectly fine to protest. It's perfectly fine to counter-protest. And it's perfectly fine for police to uphold the law. We should be aware of these things. It sounds weird that I even have to say that, but it's one of those things that it's sometimes not understood. So whenever you are doing this work, first of all, understand that thanks to Gilk v. Cuniff, you have the right to record. But what does this mean? So it's important for you to realize, number one, that you should stay calm and courteous. This is where most people get themselves in trouble. Again, it sounds simple, right? Just stay calm and courteous. But when you have people protesting and you have counter-protesting, tempers get jacked up real fast. It doesn't take much for people to lose their cool and start having yelling matches. And then yelling turns to screaming, then screaming turns to pushing, which turns to shoving, which turns to hitting, or deploying, throwing bricks or pepper spray or whatever that people do to each other at protests. And that's obviously not good. I mean, you're violating the First Amendment rights of them. You're not even upholding the First Amendment rights for yourself. Again, you have the right to peaceably assemble, peaceably. So as soon as you start throwing hands or bricks, you're no longer peaceable. So you have the right to peaceably assemble. So you should be always aware that I need to be calm and courteous. That's also very much important too, because whenever you're recording, people are going to hear you, and they might see you depending on how you're holding your phone. If you're doing a selfie, you're going to be seen, but otherwise they'll hear you talk as you're filming things. You need to be aware that, well, you're going to be heard too, and you're going to be judged by your behavior. So stay calm, stay courteous, stay professional, care about your cause, no doubt there, and you're allowed to be passionate for your cause. But you need to be aware when there's any kind of altercation, the calm person is usually the safest bet, because the people who are hysterical are usually the ones who drive things out of control and the ones who are judged most harshly. So again, be calm and courteous. The next thing is to understand that you should not interfere with police officers. Do not interfere with police officers. A great way to get arrested or shot is to put your hands on police officers. Police officers are busy doing their work. So if they're arresting a violent protester or some other thing that's going on, don't interfere. Don't get in their faces. Don't put your hands on them, especially, but you should maintain a safe distance. Well, what's a safe distance? The Supreme Court has never given us a definition of what a safe distance is, but there should be an understanding of what a safe distance is. First of all, you might think it's important that you need to be protected from the police, which a lot of people who protest think so. No. You need to be watch out for the people who are out of control and the agitators. And if the police are arresting somebody, that person is very likely out of control, which is why they're being arrested. That person can be a threat to you. It doesn't even matter if they're on your side or not, but if they're a counter-protester or some other violent actor, you should be aware that they're dangerous. Typically a safe bet is 20 plus feet, because if there is a malicious attacker, they can close 20 feet within a couple seconds. If they just start running at you to attack you, it doesn't take much time to cover that. So you should give yourself time, especially if you see a situation where there's someone who's misbehaving and police have any kind of weapon drawn. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a taser, because if they have a taser drawn, it could escalate to the handgun, and bullets don't discriminate. So you don't want to be real close to when any of that stuff's going on. And also, you look at things like pepper spray and tear gas. That doesn't discriminate. You don't want that in your face. So be at a distance. Your camera or your phone has a zoom capability if you want to get closer. You don't have to be right up in everyone's faces. Get back a little bit. And again, be courteous and respectful as best as you possibly can. It's important, one, to, like I said, your appearance is everything, but also for your own personal safety. No one wants to get shot. No one wants to get pepper sprayed. I mean, some people, for whatever reason, maybe do like that, but I mean, most people don't like that kind of thing. So why would you put yourself in a situation where that could happen? Stay back. Let the police do their work, because you don't fight in the street, you fight in court. So if it's one of your fellow comrades in arms, who's protesting and they're getting arrested, get footage, get clear footage, get properly covered footage. Don't run in and try to be part of the situation, because then you'll get arrested too, or pepper sprayed, or worse, shot. Stay away and do that work. Another thing that's very important is you are allowed to take photos. You are allowed to record video. You are allowed to record audio. Now, there are lots of rules and regulations, and it varies state to state to state. So it's always important to understand when you're doing this kind of work on private property. But when you're in public, on the street, sidewalk, in a park, a public park, those expectations of privacy disappear. So if I'm on private property, things can get a little bit sticky about the law. And so you need to understand every state. So if you're protesting on someone's property, or you're filming something that's happening on someone's property, you need to be aware of what's happening in that particular state. And every state's different, so I can't tell you what your state is, wherever you're listening from. But if you're talking about public property, and when I say public, I don't mean where public gathers. I mean government owned by public. So government owned, like the street, like parks. Those kind of things are government owned. Parking lot at Walmart, just because there's public there does not make it public space. That's private property. But the street, that's public. So you have the right to record audio and video. You have the right to take pictures. You can do that. Now, of course, keep in mind, you're going to pick up anything and everything that happens there. Now, that might be your hope and intention to document everything that's going on. And some people do that exclusively just to catch those things. But that doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to, I mean, the downside is you're going to catch everything. So every bad word that is said, every callous thing that's said, and, you're going to document a lot of footage, which can also be evidence if there is any kind of crime that happens. So you need to be aware that, if you're documenting things and you're claiming that you're doing this work, especially, you're making it known that you're recording, that could be subpoenaed. So everything you record, which means every video, every voice, everything. So if you have people who are recording saying awful things, that's going to be heard too. So again, that's why it's important to always stay focused, stay civil when you're doing your work. And the other thing too is whenever you grab your phone, your recording device, don't record this way. Record this way. Because when you watch a television, it's this way. It's mounted on the wall this way. It's not mounted on the wall this way. Record it this way. That way you can get a wide range. Chances are you're not going to be catching vertical things because people aren't protesting up there. They're protesting this way. So you see people who are constantly doing this to try to get everything. Well, if you just did this, you wouldn't have to move as much. And one of the biggest problems also is that people have the shaky camera syndrome. They're just like constantly they can't hold it still because they're trying to watch what's happening and they're just moving themselves around. If you're going to watch through this as your viewfinder and hold the camera steady. If you're going to record, hold it steady. And, so keep it horizontal, and then you can catch a wide variety of everything that's happening with very little movement. And when you do have to make movements, make them slow. And don't be constantly just moving all around hunting for things. Just keep it steady and move slow. That's hugely helpful because especially if you want to use that kind of thing for any kind of evidence or anything like that, you want to have good quality footage. You don't want to have it junky and wobbling all over the place and blurry and vertical. Again, you're not catching vertical things. You're catching horizontal things, the width of a street. The police car is built this way, not this way. So if someone's getting arrested and put into a car, you want to be able to shoot this way and catch the entire scene of what's going on. You want to catch everything. So keep it out. And then also don't focus on hyper close focusing ups on people, close ups. Focus on having a bigger picture, not like where they're like tiny in the scene, but like if there's a cop car, it should fill the frame. It shouldn't be like this little dot, or it shouldn't just be on the back door. Get the whole thing. That way you can see how everyone's acting in the whole scene. That way if somebody's talking, if I'm focused too tight and someone's talking over here, I don't know who that is. And it's just a guess over who's talking. Whereas if I have a bigger shot, now I can hear the person talking and see who's talking. So again, if I need any kind of evidence or proof of something later, I can have it. Here's the person saying that thing, and you can see him and hear him on this video. Again, I'm looking for good footage, not just random footage, because random footage isn't good, and it's not hard at all to find online. Tons of photos of any kind of event, tons of video of any event, and they're almost always shot vertically because we're used to doing that, and the cameras are always moving around, or they're too zoomed out or too zoomed in, and they're just terrible shots. Be the one who has really good footage. Be the one who has pride in having good footage, and be the one who recognizes the legal necessity of having good footage. Footage that's all shaky and all over the place isn't going to provide you much good legal footage if you need to have it. So take that, and it's good. So speaking of all your footage, as you're capturing it, or once you're done capturing it, remember that no one has the legal right to tell you to delete that footage. A police officer, a fellow protester, a counter-protester, a government official, no one has the right to seize your phone, to force you to delete footage, nothing. Again, if you're on public property, so make sure we're talking about that. So no one has the right to do that. That's your property. You are working under the full and lovely protection of the First Amendment. Now, if you're doing illegal things, we've got some other issues to deal with. But if you're, again, peaceably protesting, you're exercising your First Amendment right. You are allowed to have that footage. And no one is allowed to take that from you. That's yours. So be very stubborn about that. And now it's very hard because you might have some consequences coming your way because they might be very angry that you have them on camera. But again, that once you're out in public on government property, your right to have like privacy dissipates. You have no expectation of privacy when you are on public property. You're out there for the world to see. Just like any other time you're walking down the sidewalk, you're out there for the world to see. So again, you have every legal right to keep that footage. So don't let people bully you and tell you can't have it. Now, they can go get a warrant based on probable cause from a judge. So if they want to see your footage, you don't have to give it to them. You don't have to share it with them. You don't even have to hold up your phone and show it to them. If they want to see it badly enough, if it's a police officer, they can go get a warrant from a judge, and that they have probable cause to see that. Now, that doesn't mean you can't share it with them. You're more than welcome to. If you want to show them your footage, have at it. If you think you've got some good information to share, have at it. If you want to post it on Facebook, have at it. If you want to post it on TikTok or share it with the local news, have at it. It's your footage. You can do whatever you want with it, but you don't have to. You're not compelled to share it with anybody. You can keep it in your own little private collection forever if you want, but you're not compelled to share it. So that's the key thing to remember. So they can go get, they can compel you if a judge says there is enough probable cause to issue a warrant to get that footage. You can, in which case you should have a backup of it. You should have it saved in multiple places. That way, if someone acting in bad faith views the footage and deletes it, and it's gone forever, and you want to make sure you have some kind of a backup for it. You may also refuse a request from an officer to unlock your phone or provide your passcode. Most people have their phones protected. You don't have to offer that. Again, if they get a warrant, they can get the contents of your phone, and you have to give it to them that time. But until then, you don't have to unlock your phone. If they grab your phone from you and they can't get into it, oh well, you can't. They can't force you to give them that footage. Now, the downside with violent counter-protestors and things like that, you might have people who smash your phone. Again, problematic, obviously. But if it's saving to the micro SD card, it'll still be preserved. Or if you're uploading stuff to the cloud as you're recording things, it'll be preserved. But you've got to be aware that you don't have to. You can't be compelled to unless it's from a warrant signed off by a judge that that says you have to turn that material over. Another thing too that you have to understand is police officers, they're very well trained into understanding the recorded world. So if they ask you if you're recording to move for safety reasons or whatever, you have to move. You can't argue with them about how far away they want you. Because if they know the situation, or they may be trying to figure out the situation. Like if there's like a report of a bomb threat, they're going to move you far away, because what if there really is a bomb? Or if they know that someone has a gun, they're going to move you far away. Because they don't want to be responsible for you getting shot too, because you've seen shootout footage where the bad guys just spraying bullets everywhere. And you hear about bystanders getting hit because bystanders want to see what's going on. Well, they're going to move you further away. But typically it's to provide that kind of protective barrier to keep you safe. Now, you might think they're encroaching on your rights, but then again, police nowadays, they almost always welcome footage now, because the one thing they learned, once the summer of 2020 happened and all those riots that were breaking out around the country were happening, all the BLM-inspired riots that were happening, and people started accusing the police of all kinds of things, and the police got all kinds of cameras on them, cameras in their cars. It turned out to be a blessing to them, because now all these accusations about police are now being exposed left and right as false and fraudulent. And we see all kinds of false reports about cops, and then they release the body cam footage, and we see, now we know the truth. So police, in a lot of cases, welcome the cameras. They just want you to be safe while you're recording. So go stand over there, record all you want. Just don't be here. And police, they're working on stuff. So if they're trying to arrest somebody and someone comes up and puts their hands on them, they're going to assume that it's someone who's trying to break that guy free. And next thing you know, you're going to be on the ground too. You don't want that, and they don't want to have to do that, but they will do that if they have to. So they'll move you back for your safety, and then record all you want. They know you're going to anyway, so just record all you want from safety. So if you have to move back 10 more feet, just move back the 10 more feet and keep recording. You can zoom in a little bit more. Just make sure you record and get good footage. But the thing is comply. That's the quickest way to not get in any kind of trouble is comply. You have a right to be there. Now, if they try to chase you totally away, that would be a violation, but they're typically not going to do that. They're just going to push you back a little further so they can contain that crime scene. They might be evidence all around the area that they need to capture. So they need you back away from that area. So those are some things you should understand and know, as we head into, protest season, as the summer months come. You should be aware of what are my obligations, that if I'm going to activate myself under the First Amendment protection, what do I need to be thinking about when it comes to my rights to be a citizen journalist and record and document what's going on with protests, whether I'm catching the protesters, the counter-protesters, or the police. I need to be aware of what my rights are. So hopefully those kind of things help. And again, be safe and always stick with the First Amendment. Know your rights, but also make sure you're following those rights as well. Peaceably assemble. Peaceably. That's what I have for you today. I thank you for listening. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you didn't like what you heard, that's okay. Thanks for tuning in this long anyway. But I'll see you next time on Communicology.